Kia ora talofa namaste, haere mai, and welcome to the NRL. This is our big old podcast. We are recording this Wednesday morning. Couldn't do it on the Tuesday, so we're coming at you on the Wednesday, and doing it on a Wednesday, this Wednesday, early in October, first day of October, for anyone paying attention to how time vanishes past. We got Black Caps. Bay Oval versus Australia, Wednesday night. We got White Ferns versus Australia, 10:30 p.m. in India tonight. So we will not be talking much cricket in today's podcast because those games are being played tonight, but we do have our bonus podcast strictly for the generous folks funding our mahi on Patreon and those with a paid Substack subscription. We record that every Thursday. So that means tomorrow we will be reviewing the first T20 between the Black Caps and Australia and the first ODI World Cup game between the White Ferns and Australia. We'll be chatting all through that tomorrow in our bonus podcast. And that is just one of the things that you get access to as part of the Patreon whānau, patreon.com/EL NRL. Fantastic way to support our work and help us keep moving and a grooving, rocking and a rolling, and covering Aotearoa sports to the best of our ability. Full newsletters, free section, paid section, they're copied into Patreon every week, every dispatch. You get the bonus podcast every Thursday, and of course, our newsletter is structured so you get a few Kiwi Sports notes for free via Substack, and then there's even more Kiwi Sports notes for paid Substack subscribers. And of course, you can donate through Buy Me a Coffee as well. So if you do love a bit of cricket, or if you just want to hear us talk more football, or you just want to support our work, those are the platforms. But it's also just the schedule of recording. Not much cricket in today's podcast. Lots of cricket in the bonus podcast tomorrow. And we did have a glorious representation of Aotearoa swag last week. And this was followed up by the one and only Stephen Adams doing his media day interviews, which started with him saying above ground. In his response to how are you, he's above ground. So he's like, that's some mindfulness right there. Stephen Adams, he's above ground. He's happy to be here. We're learning our lesson. We're taking the gratitude for the moment from Stephen Adams there. I did chop up his media day interview to make sure we got another example of Stephen Adams speak in New Zealand. And I'd always have a chuckle at some of the responses to that video because, like, clearly I'm taking the piss. Like, New Zealand isn't a language. Last year when I did it, a few people were like, he's just speaking English. And they speak English in New Zealand. It's like, yeah, no shit, mate. We're having a joke here. We're having a laugh. And Stephen Adams, he is, I don't know, he's kind of the king of the press conference in the big old Americas. And he was barefoot in the gym. And as a keen barefooter myself, I got big respect for Stephen Adams going barefoot in the gym. And I'm going to go out on a Pahurakawa limb. And I'm going to say that in that whole facility, let me fix that. In that whole, within the boundaries of the Houston Rockets property, training property, the facility, the car park, the grounds, everything, that Stephen Adams would have been the only dude barefoot in the whole property. And that, like, there might have been a chance that some super groover for Houston Rockets, whether it was staff member, whether it was player, maybe they were outside touching grass. But it's America, and I don't think they do that shit because they just want to make money and piss people off and kill each other. So I'm going to go out on a Pahurakawa limb and I'm going to say Stephen Adams, he was the only person on that property who was barefoot, not only at that time, but also on that day. And also on this month, last month, and also this year. And I'd go a step further and I'd say maybe, I don't know this for sure because you do have some, sure, there's different types of people in America. Some want to be grounded, some want to be chill, some want to spread love, peace, and positivity. But I reckon maybe Steven Adams, he might have been the only person who was happily barefoot in the city of Houston, because some people, they might be barefoot for unfortunate reasons. And I reckon Steven Adams, he was the only person in Houston happily barefoot on that day. And that was like him saying bro, him saying fuck in a press conference, like fucking A, that type of stuff. That's all super duper Kiwi. But Steven Adams being barefoot in a land of America, that is like extra deluxe Kiwi. So that was a sight to see for Steven Adams. And shout out to all the barefooters out there. Obviously, you got to watch your step. You don't want to step in Pukeko poo, but you also got to get barefoot, feet on grass, toes on earth.
Yeah, the only man barefoot in Houston on that entire day, because neither of us were in Houston that day, and probably weren't many other New Zealanders in Houston that day as well. I think I
happily barefoot, because there probably might have been some homeless people who were barefoot.
Yes. Yeah. There'd have been some people that didn't have a choice, I'm sure. But yeah, when you're talking about stepping in Pukeko poo, the first thing I thought of when you're talking about like walking bare feet and watching out for stuff, I was thinking of the like gravel stones and things like that, the sharp pointy stuff. That was my first point of worry. But yeah, there's also smelly stuff you don't want to step in as well. There are dangers to being barefoot. It's not so simple as it seems. You got to be careful. You got to watch your step in a way that you don't if you're just wearing your $150 plus Jordans or whatever, just like everyone else probably in that facility would have been on that day. He is the king of the press conference. And I'm thinking, like, would there have been another Rockets player who would have drawn as many people to his media day thing? Well, probably, because I think when you line up all the press conferences, everyone's just going to everyone's chats. But and if it wasn't that case, and then I still think Kevin Durant, as the new player, as a former MVP star guy, big name, one of the greatest players ever, is still drawing a bigger crowd. But he's drawing a bigger crowd because people feel like they have to be there, like it's it's an obligation as a media member to be there to listen to whatever Kevin Durant might say, because that's where your headlines are coming from. They're at Steven Adams' press conferences because they want to be there, because it's fun, because he's going to say something genuinely interesting. Durant probably isn't. He's a notoriously like guarded guy. He doesn't let a lot loose off his chest in that way, and he can be a little bit prickly in those moments. Steven Adams, not only is he fun and jovial and whatever, he's also like, another thing we have talked about many times and pointed this out, he's kind of a brilliant basketball mind too. And he's brilliant because he works really hard at this stuff. He pays attention, he listens to his coaches and things like that. So he's absorbing a lot of information, has done his entire career. But also he has this really like unique ability to explain it so that anyone can understand what he's talking about. To just say basketball things in a way where someone who hasn't been around high performance basketball for the last decade, in and out of NBA facilities and stuff, like even most of the media guys probably pick up a lot of that. They learn how to understand the buzzwords and whatever. But to get an athlete who can explain things so simply so that anyone who happens to be reading that article, like those are golden quotes that he serves up. The funny quotes, but also like the insightful quotes. But the barefoot in the gym stuff also stuck out to me because like the press conference stuff, as much as all the media day things are fun, like that is the media day. You are there for the media. You are not putting on a show, but like, that you're being recorded. You know that what you're saying is for that purpose. I don't think he was just running around barefoot in the gym with Kevin Durant. Like he was working on like screen sets and things like this with Kevin Durant at the time, and probably a bunch of Kevin Durant's personal coaches. But like, I don't think he's doing that because he knows there are cameras watching him. I think it's just that it's the Houston Rockets thing. So some social media guy happens to be there, snapped a little video for the socials, whatever. But he's not doing that to perform. He's doing that just because that's what he was doing. He just naturally was like, yeah, I'm not going to put my shoes on for this. I don't need to. I'm just standing here setting screens, um, getting an idea of how to play with this guy, working on a combination. And let's not as well forget that this was like a week after the two went fishing together.
One of the funniest things Stephen Adams said at his press conference was talking shit about American fishing, because he's saying like they like how they just like fill a pond with a bunch of fish, and he's like, it's basically going fishing in a goldfish bowl, and it's a bit weird.
Yeah.
And I was like, I like that, because it might happen in Aotearoa, but we got the big wide ocean. I do have a hot take that I think Americans are some of the most boring people in the world. And I would also, personally, I'm not going barefoot to the supermarket. Like, that's neck level. I'm not walking barefoot through the city, right? Like, I'm not doing some of those things, because as you said,
that's why jandals were invented.
Exactly. You got slides, you got jandals.
The in-between.
You never know what's going to be on the concretes of the inner cities. So you do need to watch your toes there. But as we get
supermarket floors notoriously dirty as well. Like those are,
yeah.
If you actually do go barefoot for a sec, you're coming out with like black coated soot feet.
Sounds like it's personal experience. But as we swing into mindfulness, anytime maybe I start thinking about like, I'm not sure about these kids, kids these days, the younger generations. I don't have any anxiety. I don't have much anxiety about that, but old folks might say it or something. When I'm cruising around and I see kids barefoot on the concretes, I'm thinking, that's the future, baby. We're in good hands. We're in good feet, because the kids are barefoot and they're getting that grounding, they're getting the peace and the calm of the earth, and they're out here living connected to nature, and they're also training their feet, because they're out there running around on concrete as we used to do, building a bit of strength in your feet. Whereas nowadays I'm just like, give me a good patch of grass and I'm touching earth. But we need some mindfulness. So aside from being optimistic, hopeful, faithful about the younger generations and what they're up to, what is our mindfulness for this week?
Mindfulness for this week comes from the iconic, the legendary author Thomas Pynchon, who has a new novel coming out in I think later this month. And also one of his old novels was the basis for the new Paul Thomas Anderson movie. Many are calling the film of the decade. I would have watched it, but I was going to go yesterday and watch it, but then I have been sick, so one battle after another is the name of the film, and it's been one battle after another to get to watch it. But I grabbed a topical Pynchon quote. I grabbed a Pynchon quote because Pynchon is topical, and the quote is from his 1997 book, Mason and Dixon, which is one of the ones I haven't read yet, but only because it's massive. The quote goes, "Who claims truth? Truth abandons." Written in sort of like the old-timey language of when the book was set, so it's effectively means like, he who claims truth, truth abandons, which is a fancy way of saying like, effectively, when people try to convince you that they're telling the truth, that's probably a good example of how you know that they're not telling the truth. The folks who protest a little bit too much, the folks who make it, who really try to lean on that aspect of like, what I'm saying is the correct path, and enforce it a little bit more than seems natural, because if it's true, right? That's an empirical thing. If it's true, you don't need to force that. You don't need to prove it. It's just true. You start stressing about things, that's when you start to get doubts about whether this person might actually be trying to manipulate the truth. So probably a nice lesson to take there from the master of paranoia, Mr. Thomas Pynchon, about how you stress it a little bit too much, we start to doubt you.
But the way it was phrased is, the truth abandons you. So it's not like you're masking the truth. It's like, by claiming the truth The truth has gapped it. The truth's gone later. Bowl.
Yeah.
See you later. Then you're left without the truth, without the cold facts. So that was a tricky one. Still haven't fully wrapped my noggin around it, but we fleshed it out. Do you have any more notes?
That is, well, your note is a very good one because it's not just about like, yeah, it's not just about the person's intention. It's also saying like truth has this kind of mind of its own. Truth has this kind of like, um, the truth itself is the one that walked away in that situation. You can't hold it. It's like you can't hold a bird in your palm sort of thing, or else you're actually just, well, I guess you can technically hold a bird in your palm, but is it really a bird if you're not going to let it fly? You know what I mean? It's sort of like that, and it might be in that situation. It might even be a thing where like you start with something that is true, but in trying to dominate the truth, you make it untrue.
Good stuff. Not good stuff. The New Zealand Breakers 0-3 to start the NBL season. I think my first thing here is I think the Breakers are in danger of losing relevance right now because we've got a very hectic sporting schedule and they're 0-3. Like, what can we say? They just suck right now. And it's like, well, if you keep sucking while a lot of other stuff is happening, you're dipping out of the relevance stakes. And I think, do we have 2 home games? Was the Perth game a home game?
The Perth game was yeah. They've played 2 home games and 1 away. I think they're away to Sydney next.
Yes, and Sydney, they've only played 1 game, but it's a loss. So that's a good opportunity for the Breakers to fight back because they are playing another team that has not won a game, that has lost both of their home games to start the season. And obviously, given my position on the Breakers, the biggest issues for me right now are the imports and the coach. Right? The biggest issue for the Breakers, obviously, considering who I am and what I say and what I do, the biggest issue for the Breakers right now are all the people not from New Zealand. And obviously, it's a wee bit ridiculous. It's a little bit of a joke, but I mean, the imports are a bit underwhelming. Like, even Parker Jackson Cartwright, sure, best player, key player for the Breakers, but if, like, there must be another way to attack the basket than using Parker Jackson Cartwright. There's other ways to play basketball than depending on the shortest player on the court to do literally everything for you. Like, surely we can create a different style of basketball.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
And like, Parker Jackson Curry, he's a very good player. He's the best player for the Breakers once again, but that's kind of setting the tone for the icky import vibes right now, where he's just doing way too much, and it's the coach who's probably playing into that. He's participating in that. And I'm kind of just underwhelmed by the coach all round. I actually think there's a bit of a situation brewing because who's the new assistant coach?
Which one? But I'm guessing you're meaning Judd Flavel?
I'm meaning Judd Flavel, the best basketball coach in New Zealand right now and in the last few years, helping Canterbury win back-to-back NBL championships. He steps away from that job, takes over as Tall Blacks coach, I think. So that's probably where he's at. Is he Tall Blacks? Yeah, he's Tall Blacks coach.
Yeah, he is.
And when he steps away from Canterbury, they don't win the NBL. He's assistant coach right now. And I don't know if you can hold both positions, Tall Blacks coach, Breakers coach, but Koppinen was not appointed by the current regime. So there's a coach who was appointed by the previous regime, which is a regime that was very yuck. And they have stuck with Koppinen. They've given him an opportunity to start the season 0-3, while they have New Zealand's best coach as an assistant coach. So I think there could be a situation brewing there where maybe the Breakers actually want Judd Flavel to be the coach. And if Koppinen just keeps losing, that's going to be an easy transition. But like, also, like, Brockington, Blitz champion, superstar of the Blitz. Barely notice him on the court. Rob Baker, barely notice him on the court. Kareem Lopez, he's a very exciting talent. I think he might be one of the best players, if not the best player sometimes, ahead of Jackson Cartwright, but he's young. He's immature. He's got like a lot of, I just don't think he is a reliable performer week in, week out. He's a very, very talented basketballer. I think he might be our best next star, whatever they want to call it, player for the Breakers ever, which isn't a high bar considering some of the goofy players that have come through the Breakers and gone on to do nothing. But these dudes like Brockington, underwhelming. Rob Baker, underwhelming. Coppinen as coach, underwhelming. Parker Jackson Cartwright, doing way too much. And that's the recipe for an 0-3 start. And obviously I'm conveniently overlooking all the New Zealand players who have probably underperformed as well. Is that, how do you assess my assessment of those foreign players? And is that fair? Is it unfair? Should I be putting more of the blame on the locals and the local management as well? Because the whole Breakers new management, they all are heavily connected to Aotearoa.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked so much in the lead up to the season, like putting a lot of positivity around the Breakers, about how good we thought the Kiwi players would be and how exciting it is to get back to Kiwi ownership, and that kind of like the Kiwi values and how they're going to play basketball and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, probably one of the underrated aspects of that that I feel like I should have mentioned more often in this stuff. I don't even think I mentioned it. In fact, we got a comment on one of the Facebook things from I think from Leighton Hamilton, actually, who's a fairly renowned coach around the country as well. That, like, mentioning this on the season preview I wrote, like also the Kiwi coaching, like that there's another part of that. I know we haven't had we don't have a Kiwi head coach right now. Several years under the previous regime, we didn't have Kiwi assistant coaches either. And now, not only is Judd Flavel on board as an assistant coach for the Breakers, but also Matt Lacey too. So two guys who are like NBA caliber coaches who have worked with. One of them is the current All Blacks coach, and Lacey's
NBA
done a lot
or
of stuff.
NBL?
NBL, sorry, of course.
Mr. Lacey, assistant coach for the Houston Rockets. Judd Flavel, head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. Like, that's
give it a couple years. We do have Ross McMains, who was around as one of the sort of deeper assistants on the Boston Celtics when they won an NBA championship a couple years ago. So there is that. Of course, Zico Coronel as well, champion in Japan last season. So then we might not be that far away from a like official Kiwi assistant coach, or in a higher up level like that. We'll give it some time, but first we might need to get one of the Breakers, because like I'm sitting there trying to assess what I saw, and that Perth game, they were losing most of the way, but they had like a really strong third quarter. They finished that. They were in a position to win that game. They were ahead, and they were just terrible in the fourth quarter. And often when teams crumble in the fourth quarter, you start to think more coaching than players, because that's what you prepare for. That's what you set. This is when like your key players come through. This is when you're playing your best lineup to play those closing minutes and stuff. And I don't know what the Breakers' best lineup is. I just know that what they like to do is let Parker Jackson Cartwright do everything. And PJC has been playing through a rib injury. He has also been awesome in most of these games, except for fourth quarters, because he was crap in the fourth quarter against Brisbane as well in their other home game, which was another game where they weren't quite as ahead, but they were in position to make a run. Like that was not a game that they ended up losing, I think, by double figures or whatever, like they have in most of these other games. But they were in it with a few minutes to go. And Parker Jackson Cartwright admittedly missed most of preseason with that same injury. So I don't think his conditioning is there. Like, it seems like you're watching him just throw the ball away in these fourth quarters in some of these games. Didn't have to play fourth quarter against Melbourne because they got absolutely walloped, so there was no need. But in the two other ones, the two home games, like he's coughing the ball up and he's missing shots, and I'm like, he just looks tired. He looks like he doesn't quite have his legs under him the way he did earlier in the thing. And it's like, well, maybe then if he's injured and hasn't been playing through preseason and doesn't have full capacity, he maybe doesn't need to play 33 minutes out of 40 per game, you know? And looking at that Perth game, I think the player who played the second most minutes was Kareem Lopez, who, like you said, he's supremely talented. He is my favorite next star. His offensive rebounding, his dunks, that kind of stuff is great. He's showing that he can hit a. I don't. So yeah, no, he had 2 out of 4 from 3-point range in this game. So that's quite rare for the Breakers. I don't have a lot of guys who are hitting multiple threes in a game at the moment. So that's great. But he's like 18 years old and he's getting cooked on defense every now and then. He doesn't always know where to be. It's like you want that guy to be playing good minutes, but you want him to be like your fourth or fifth best player. You don't want him to be your second best player. In that game, well, first of all, no one else played more than 23 minutes, which is barely over 50% of the game. 40-minute game, no one else has played more than 23. That was Sam Menenga. And that comes around to a feeling of frustration that I had with Petteri Koppinen last season, which I think last season it was more just like, how do you find your best combinations? I don't know, because this team doesn't really have them. Last year's roster was compromised to say the least, particularly once he had dumped old mate Taco in the middle of it and had to rejig things in a hurry. And so you of course you're searching for things on the fly. This season shouldn't be that way, and yet it's like, I don't know, just put your best players on the floor for longer. Why do you have to make so many substitutions? Why do you have to keep mixing it up all the time? And one thing that stands out from looking at, well, two things that stand out from the box score of that game, having also watched an experience like this, just the soul destroying aspect of just watching them throw away a game to lose by 11 points, which they probably should have won with 10 minutes to go. One of those things that stands out is Parker Jackson Cartwright, 18 points off 18 shots. He's missed all 5 of his 3-pointers. All right. Like 18 points and only the 5 assists today. He'd been boosting his assists recently. Not as much in that game. But like 1 point per field goal attempt kind of thing. That's around about the baseline. If you're worse than that, you've not had a very good shooting game. If you're better than that, you've had a decent shooting game. If you're at that average, all right. But it's not the average that stands out as much as looking Isaiah Brockington, 5 points off 5 field goal attempts, 2 of 5 from the field. It's like neither of them were particularly great. Neither of them were particularly bad with their shot making there. It's the balance that strikes me. Like, why is PJC taking 18 shots and Brockington's only getting 5? Like you just can't. I mean, you said it, right? PJC is the smallest guy on the field. He has limitations there. He is also arguably the most talented player on the court while he's out there, but you can't be so one-dimensional. You can't be just leaning on the same guy every time, because especially when you come to fourth quarter aspects, it's just too obvious. And he's not going to give the ball up, and when he does, he turns it over, and it's like this isn't very good basketball. So not being able to find that balance is frustrating. The other thing that stands out is because we're talking about the Kiwi stuff. Like,
wait, hold on.
Also, Rob Baker only playing 12 minutes.
Yeah. So what was
Colin
Baker's?
Davidson only playing 4.
What was Baker's points possessions?
4 points off 1 of 6 shooting. So he was below that marker, but he only played 12 minutes.
Wait, so 4 points from how many shots?
6 shots.
Well, that's worse.
So he was the worst of them.
Yeah,
he was the worst of them.
Those are the imports, all averaging less than a point per shot.
Yeah.
Well, averaging 1 point per shot or less, because Parker Jackson Currow was 18 from 18, but then you go to Carlin Davison. Continue.
Well, thing with Carlin Davison is we were talking about him after those first 2 games, having played like he'd already got halfway to his entire minutes tally from last season. He was playing 20 plus minutes in each of them. Not very good in the Melbourne game, but pretty good in the Brisbane game. And then he only gets 4 minutes in this game. It's just like, I get that he's looking for, Coach Kopp is like looking for, he's trying to find his rotation. He's looking for what his combinations are. but it just feels like everything's so volatile at the moment. And so this is why, like, I feel like I have to preface this because it's too easy to say we hyped up the Kiwi stuff and now we're just going to excuse the Kiwi stuff and blame the non-Kiwi stuff. But there's just too much of this which feels to me like it falls back upon coaching. The poor fourth quarters, the lack of sort of an identified rotation 3 games into the thing, like the fluctuating minutes between players from game to game, the way in which he doesn't seem to be, I don't know, the way in which he doesn't lean on his best players for longer, even if those aren't the Kiwi players, it's whatever gets you the victories, find that foundation, and then those other guys who find themselves out of that can compete to get more minutes on top of that. At the moment, you sort of don't know who's going to play from game to game. One big bright aspect, though, of that loss to Perth was Isaiah Le'afa had a really good game. I think he made 4 3-pointers, 14 points off the bench. Easily his best game of the 3, and he, of course, is a former Sydney player. Played for Sydney for 1 season last season, didn't go so well for him, largely because his shot making was quite inconsistent. So if he turns up there in Sydney and like drops, 5 3-pointers on them and leads the Breakers to a victory, that could be a nice, glorious moment. And it's also just very important for the Breakers to find as many 3-pointer shooters as they can and to get that consistency out of Le'afa, who is an inconsistent player of center for the Tall Blacks as well, where it's like, he will have a game like this and then he'll go 0 of 7 from deep in the next game, and always is going to give you a good baseline of defensive effort and work rate and that stuff. That's great, but he needs his shot to be dropping to be the effective player he can be, and it did against Perth. Unfortunately, didn't get a lot of help, especially from his imports who are supposed to be the best players. Frustrating stuff, but at the moment, and it's too early to lean anything like too convincingly. We know that this is an organization that's going through an entire cultural rebuild. On the court, off the court, all this stuff is going on. I don't expect that to lead to victories immediately. I do think that they are the type of team that was going to need a few weeks anyway to start to figure things out. It's just that they seem like they're starting from further back than I thought they would be. And it's just, there's too many of those things that point towards the coach at the moment, which is the frustration that I have after those first 3 games. But it has only been 3 games. It's easy to fix your season from here. It's a long, long way to go. But you're gonna need to see a little bit more from Coach Kopp, and then by extension from the imports, and then by extension from that, from everyone.
Yeah, Coach Kopp right now is because Coach Koppinen is with a K. At the moment, he's Coach Kopp, C-O-P, trying to interrupt the Aotearoa vitamins.
Never trust a cop.
He's just a bit annoying with the old Kopp Aotearoa vitamin styles. But we do have a pretty interesting all-white squad that was announced, I think yesterday on Tuesday or Monday, whenever it was. Interesting because it showcases New Zealand's football depth. It showcases the all-whites depth because we've got a pretty funky squad with only 2 players from the A-League. Francis de Vries and Tim Payne are the only players from the A-League in this squad. And we've got call-ups for Owen Parker-Price, who is playing in Sweden, and George Stanger, who is playing, he's a goalkeeper, I believe. He's playing in Scotland. Centre back. So Parker Price from Sweden, Stanger from Scotland. They are in their first all-white squad. They get the call-up. But this, because the last all-white squad, it seemed like a bit more, I think they were playing in New Zealand, so there was a bit more A-League flavour. And yet we can still name, I don't know how many players we've got here, squad of 23. We've got 23 players. 2 of them are currently playing in the local competition, the A-League. Everyone else is coming from around the world. I'll just roll through the countries, right? Norway, USA, England, South Africa, England, Scotland, Denmark, France, Sweden, Poland, Serbia, Wales, Scotland, America, Netherlands, America, Wales, England, Denmark, England. This is a global All Whites team to play global football because they're playing Poland and Norway
Both countries
somewhere.
on that list of nations you just mentioned.
Indeed, they'll be playing I think in Poland and in Norway. So those are two
Yeah.
European leagues. That's obviously why they've gone with the European flavour. But start with those two A-League players. Are De Vries and Payne selected even though there's no other A-League players because they need to be in the all-white squad? Like, they need Tim Payne as a right-back, versatile defender, and they need De Vries at left-back because I don't know if I see Mr. Cacace in this list, so they might be down a
Still
left-back
injured.
there. So is it a case of De Vries and Payne being in the squad as the only A-League players because they have to be in the squad?
Yes. Like to put it simply, yeah, that's what it is. The A-League starts in like 2 weeks. So basically the weekend after these guys get back from this international duty, that's the start of the A-League. So it was kind of determined like anyone who goes on this trip is unlikely to be able to then back it up on the weekend, or at least is at risk of injury if they back it up on the weekend for their A-League clubs. So what they decided is that if you're going to be starting for the All Whites, we still want you. If you're going to be on the bench, it's probably not worth the risk. And so that's what it is. That's why there's only two A-League guys there. They've decided to rest everyone else so that they're available for the Phoenix, for Auckland, for everyone else. Except for Payne, because he's a starting right back, except for De Vries, because in the absence of Libby Cacace, who is still injured, he's a starting left back.
Tell us a bit about Owen Parker-Price, Mr. OPP, coming out of Sweden, and George Stanger, who's coming out of Scotland. Why are they in the squad? What do they offer the squad? What's their kind of upside potential in representing Aotearoa?
Yeah, so a bunch of A-League players aren't there. That means you got to find some other guys. And these are probably the two, I would say they're the two guys that, regardless of who happens to have been missing anyway, the two are putting up the best cases for debuts of the uncapped players around the place. Both of them on the back of recent big time transfers. So George Stangers is an interesting case. He is born and raised in Scotland. His dad was a was Tony Stanger, who was a winger for the Scottish rugby team in the 90s, and because he played rugby, he spent a bit of time playing in. I think he actually moved to he was playing in Australia, but he met a Kiwi woman living in Australia. So George Stanger's mother is a New Zealander, and that's how he's eligible for New Zealand. He's had a he's had a wild career because he started off around about the time he was playing New Zealand under 20s with New Zealand in that 2018, 2019, whichever year it was. But it's been 2019 when we had our best ever under 20s World Cup team, many of whom are in the squad right now. Like that is guys like Joe Bell, that is guys like Callum McCowart, Sarpreet Singh, Elijah Just, etc., etc. Like a whole bunch of them. George Stanger was in that team as well. He was the centre back alongside Nando Peinecker when they shut out Erling Haaland in that under 20 World Cup. Um, and we'll get the chance to do so again without Nando Peinecker because he's injured, and it's likely that Peinecker's injury, as well as an injury too to Tommy Smith, although Darren Basley loves Tommy Smith so much that he said he might even just bring Tommy Smith into the team in a non-playing capacity, even though he's unfit to be able to play, which is like, well, you do that anyway. Like
Yep.
you pick him in every squad, but you don't play him, so he's kind of in a non-playing capacity in every tour.
I think that's the best thing for the World Cup, though. Like,
Well, it might be.
again, I'll repeat it. We got too many centre backs for Tommy Smith to be there as a player. Now, if there's centre backs who are injured, maybe they score 10 own goals in 5 games, they shit the bed, they don't deserve to be in the squad, whatever. Then you select Tommy Smith. But if we got Bindon, and who are other centre backs
Brendan,
there?
Boxall, Sermon, and then you've got Peinecker and sort of the next tier. That's four centre backs right
Yep.
there. Tim Payne can cover centre back.
That is
That's sort of
why
all you need.
you select Tommy Smith as a culture guru. as a kaumatua, as an assistant coach, as a drinks man, whatever you want to do. I just can't see him being a top tier squad member, but as you were.
Yeah, and it's sort of as a it's using up a spot in the squad on a it's not a luxury because that's a very important thing to have someone like that in the team. But yeah, you can have him in an off-field capacity without and then just also pick George Stanger or whoever. In this case, because not only is Tommy Smith injured, but also Nando Pinnock is injured, you've actually only got three centre backs, which is why Bill Tuiloma's also been
Mm.
recalled, which is nice for him. He actually hasn't played for Charlotte since getting injured. He didn't play for them most of the season. Then they had a few injuries, and he comes in as like their, I won't say makeshift right back because he's played a lot of right back in his time in the MLS, and probably is more in this always squad as a right back than he is as a centre back, but he obviously is capable of covering both. Um, then yeah, having not played anything other than one or two cup games for like months on top of months, he suddenly starts starting every single game at right back, which is a more stressful position than centre back because you got a lot more running to do. And guess what he did? He got injured. He pulled a hamstring, and so he's since come back from that. But they've gone with other options there. So he's been it's such a weird season for Billy T, but he has been recognised for what he was doing before by getting the recall for the All Whites. So there's a few of those ones because Andre De Jong is back here as well.
Mm.
Been waiting so long to see Andre De Jong get a chance, but I also kind of understand it why he hasn't been getting it because it's like we got a lot of players in that position. He's not an out and out number nine who would play in Chris Wood's position as a backup, which is maybe where there's a gap because Ben Waine is that train's off the tracks at the moment. Max Mata's injured, and Costa Barbarouses hasn't been picked. I think that is where De Jong will be seen, but he has a very different option. He likes to drop in and connect rather than being like a target man up top on the last defender. So, but cool to see him back in because I actually don't, he's got a lot of mentions and flying Kiwis lately because he actually hasn't had that good of a start to the season. So, great form for large patches of last season, couldn't get in. Form dips this year, but the opportunity arises because of other circumstances. So it just goes to show it's not just about what you've been doing in the last month. It's really like what you've been doing in the last year, or Darren Baisley and his team. They do pay attention to these things, and you get yourself in the mix, but the opportunity might not come at like the time you expect it. I think maybe this was an expected opportunity for George Stanger though, at this point. What I was saying before, like when he was in that under 20 team, he was around Hamilton Accies. Played a bit of premiership for them, top flight of Scottish footy. Then he starts getting loan deals, and he gets released and starts going elsewhere. And then he just sort of drops off for a bit, and then he resurfaces playing for a university team, and I think the fifth tier. So by the time he was 21, 22, he'd played in each of the top five divisions in Scotland. But in the last couple of years, which yeah, it's just a crazy stat, that kind of coverage. In the last couple of years, though, he's been working his way very, very like directly upwards. So he has that little bit for his uni team. Then he transfers to a fourth tier team where he plays a bit. I think they got promoted, and then he does go right in the next year. He gets the transfer to Ayr United, and the championship only just misses out on promotion with them, but then gets a transfer to Kilmarnock anyway. And now in game of Kilmarnock in the Scottish Premiership. So he has had a very, very distinct rise recently. And when you get yourself playing on that kind of level, that is the same division that Elijah Just is playing at the moment. You get yourself in that kind of picture, you are in national team candidacy frame. And the only thing that might have stopped him is if he felt like he didn't want to play for New Zealand anymore, being a dual national. But when he signed for Kilmarnock, like they asked him about that. He did a sit-down interview with the team's like the club's YouTube channel, and specifically they asked him like, you were an under 20s player, you were an Olympian for New Zealand under 23s. Is that an aspiration you still have? And he very, very clearly said like, yes, I want to represent New Zealand. I want to play for the All Whites World Cup coming up, blah, blah, blah. And now he's going to get that opportunity. Owen Parker-Price, he's one of the Ole boys. And when I say one of the Ole boys, I mean like the OPP is one of the OGs of that, the golden generation, the Declan Edge era of Ole Academy. Again, Callum McCowart, Elijah Just, Nando Pinnock, those lads. the Eastern Suburbs team that won the National League title in 2019, it must have been. I think a lot of those guys were with Western Suburbs when they made the Chatham Cup final the year before that as well. Like um, those lads, Owen Parker-Price in that Eastern Suburbs team, I thought was only a shade behind Callum McCallum and Elijah Just, as like those two were the standouts. Just as I think a year younger than the others as well, so that made it even more impressive that he was just getting assist after assist after assist, and McCallum was just scoring all the goals. And actually, their second top goal scorer, not an LA boy, but one guy who was just already with Eastern Suburbs when they combined, was Andre De Jong. So he's getting, yeah, he's back on the scene at the same time as one of his other old teammates is there. Tim Payne was in that team as well prior to signing with the Wellington Phoenix. So an incredible team to look back on, and even more so in light of this All White squad. But yeah, I thought Owen Parker-Price as a creative midfielder was only like McCallum was the standout, Just was right there with him. I would have put Parker-Price next up on that list, but he went along with a couple others like Don Woolridge is another one who's in that team. I think Harry Mossage was in that. Yeah, he was in that team as well, but he's a little bit older. They went over to Torslanda in Sweden with Declan, and so they were just there for ages. And Owen Parker-Price must have put in like 5 years with that team, lower divisions in Sweden, kind of out of sight, out of mind, except for the fact that he did, especially in the last 2 years, was getting a lot of goals and assists for them. So that was standing out. But then just a couple of months ago, he gets a transfer to Orgeet. I haven't watched any of their games yet to know how to pronounce their name, but those Scandi ones get tricky anyway. Even if you've heard the pronunciations, it doesn't always make sense to read it from the page with an English speaking perspective. But he a big transfer, not only jumping him up from one division to the next, but really going from like lower mid table in the third tier to challenging for promotion from the second tier. So it's almost two divisions jumped. It's at least one and a half. And I thought they would ease him in over the rest of this season and then maybe see where things are next season. That's not what's happened. He's pretty much become a starting level center midfielder for them within 2 months of arriving. And again, like that is an incredible jump. That is an incredible rise. And you do something like that, you're immediately in the frame. Like you have to be paying attention to that as an all-whites coach. And I didn't think an all-whites call-up would come so soon, especially because I think for him, like he's not very tall. He's a bit slight, and I think maybe he's a bit too much like guys like Justin and McCall and Sarpreet Singh, a few of those kind of other attacking midfielders. Ryan Thomas, if you're looking at a more of a deeper role, like there's other guys who do what he does better than him. So he's not really offering a point of difference, but also this is a squad where you're not picking a bunch of the A-League guys who are maybe like, yeah, not starting 11 players, but they're the guys that build out your depth. And a lot of them are just sort of reliable presences in these squads. Like this is the opportunity to try someone like that, whether it's an ideal fit or not. And I do think like he's an incredibly talented technical player, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do for the All Whites. I'm sure he will get a debut over these two games. Stanger probably, but I think Parker-Price is a bit more of a that's one I more expect to happen. And yeah, I'll be curious to see where he fits in because he's been playing as more of a like as more of a number 8 for OAS, but I think his presence for the All Whites would be more as a 10, or maybe even as a sort of one of the wingers who has a license to drift in and combine, sort of like how Elijah Just does. So it'll be interesting to see what the vision is from Paisley. But yeah, just as in the same way as George Stanger has, like a very deserved call up from someone who has made a fast rise up. And in his case, it was like a fast rise after a bunch of years where it felt like he was stagnant, not because of his bad performances. His performances were consistently awesome, but just the level he was playing at for as long as he was playing there. It just always felt like he was a guy getting left behind because he was capable of playing so much higher. And then suddenly he gets an opportunity to play so much higher and he proves immediately why. that instinct was theirs because yeah, he is capable of that, and here we go. Like he's worked his way into the All Whites within a couple months of that transfer.
Matt Garbutt's back, Mr. Posh. Fantastic form for Peterborough United. Like, probably that's the thing. Like, some of these dudes, their form didn't necessarily mean they're selected in this All White squads. There's kind of although there are other players playing around the world who would have been competing for selection, so it's still a competitive selection situation. The other dude I'm curious about is Dalton Wilkins. Has he played much for the All Whites recently? It says here he's played 3 games. He's currently playing in Denmark. Give me a quick little minute about Dalton Wilkins.
Well, he's another one of that Ole generation who was in that Eastern Suburbs team. He's a left back. He will have been picked as the backup to Francis de Vries. I'm not sure he's going to play though because he went off injured a couple of weeks ago for Kolding. He was playing at Sondeski in the top flight in Denmark, having signed there from Kolding, but they've loaned him back after he came back from a relatively long-term injury and just to get game time basically for the rest of the season. So he's gone there, dropped down to the second tier in Denmark, did play a few games for them, but then yeah, went off injured in the first half of a game recently and hasn't played again since. So I was surprised to see him picked. I wouldn't have been surprised to see him picked if he hadn't been injured because I think he's as good as well, I think he's a better all-round footballer than Francis de Vries, but de Vries we know has that sort of X-factor crossing element to him. But in terms of being like a starting left back in the absence of Cacace, I think Wilkins has as much of a claim as anyone. But whereas de Vries has the X factor in his favor, Wilkins has the whatever the opposite of that, the Y factor. I don't know. He has the Achilles heel, which is that he's made of glass and he's consistently injured. And the last time he got called up for the All Whites was when they went and played USA and Mexico, pulled out of that squad with injury. That was the injury that was the long-term injury that I was talking about, which sort of cost him his spot at Sondeski because they went and signed other players to play in his position because he was missing for a while. Yeah, he's an excellent player, but he can play right back as well. So he offers you cover on both sides of the thing, which I don't think de Vries does. Don't really think, even though I've seen Sam Sutton play right back for the All Whites, I don't think he really does. McGarry doesn't. Like, he's probably the only one of those fullbacks who would. I think maybe Callan Elliott. Like Callan Elliott might be. He's a right back who could play on the left. I think maybe, but there's not really a lot of because if you get someone who can cover both of those, you've picked one player who like you've freed up a spot somewhere else. You don't have to pick 2 players for one spot. But yeah, he is currently injured, and I wouldn't be surprised if they replace him in the squad, which probably would actually have to mean picking a third A-League player. So maybe Sam Sutton is in Perth, so that's closer. Maybe he's the guy. McGarry was in the last squad, so he might be available as well. Unless you go for like a Nico Kerwin or someone who is European based, if you want to stick strictly to that pattern. But yeah, stoked to see Wilkins in there. Not sure if he's going to stay in there though. Have to wait and see the severity of that, I guess. So maybe it's just a little knock and he will be okay. I hope so because he should have more than 3 caps, but at the stage of his career. But yeah, made of glass.
The New Zealand under-20s team is currently playing against Egypt, 2-1 up at half-time, and we will dive deeper into that tomorrow in our bonus podcast. We do need to chat through some National League football. I think we had a cat on the field in one game. It looked like a cat. Yep. In the corner flag area, and you've got a bit of a situation there behind you on the video. I imagine a camera might have flipped over at some point.
I don't think flipped over, because it happened a bunch of times. This is the Southern United game where they played the Phoenix Academy and the Women's National League. Just every time the camera had to, because they got like most of the games, there are a couple, like 1 or 2 per week where they'll film it with multicam setups and whatever with, actual humans operating the machinery, which is always awesome, but also much more expensive. So most of the National League games are covered by those like AI cameras, which just automatically scan and track the ball and follow it like that. So for some reason, for whatever reason, in the Southern game, whenever the ball went out for like a throw-in on the left side and the camera had to pan that way and like it was almost like it panned beyond its scope. and the thing started freaking out like that you see behind me. So I screenshotted it and thought it looked funny because I just I like when broadcasts go into chaos. I think it's funny when stuff like that happens. So um, the trees are upside down. The trees are upside down. It looks weird. Um, didn't otherwise affect the game because it only happened when the ball was out of play and the camera was trying to track the ball that was outside of its range. But yeah, that's what that is.
Let's talk Isa Prins because he scored a couple goals for Wellington Olympic, I think. And we talked about Isa Prins last week. So what'd you make of Isa Prins and his first game of the season as one of the best emerging players in Aotearoa that many folks don't know a lot about?
May not, but like I was thinking about this and wondering about like what the scope is because we talked about this last time we talked about it, like well what are the options for a guy with this kind of caliber, like where does he go from here? And the obvious next step would be the A League, and I was thinking about that, like what he's doing. It's the same stuff Jesse Randall was doing before he signed with Auckland FC, the same stuff Liam Gilliam was doing before he signed with Auckland FC. It's like a very similar like level of top end National League production through the winter season as well. And Gillian's case, it was also because he was playing for Auckland City. It was also he was doing that for like Oceania Champions Leagues and stuff like that too. So he got an extra couple competitions. Prince obviously now has won back-to-back Chatham Cups with Wellington Olympic and was he played off the bench last year, but was a star player. I think he was the one who he didn't score their goal. It was an own goal, but it was from his cross after he had like dribbled the ball 30 meters on the counter attack or something like that. So effectively, he created the goal there, and then had a starring role, man of the match in the most recent Chatham Cup final, and starts the National League, scores a couple of goals against the Phoenix Reserves, which was a Phoenix Reserves team which like 9, 10 of their players are away at the Under-20 World Cup at the moment, including their coach. Well, as well as their coach, Chris Greenacre too, was also there coaching that team. Um, Plus, the A-League team was in Sydney playing a preseason game. So Auckland FC had the same issue as well. They don't have quite as many players in the under-20 squad, but they also had a first team friendly in Australia over the weekend. So both of those academy teams, and for whatever reason, the Phoenix women's team, well, I know not for whatever reason, because there's also an under-19s women's Oceania qualifying competition going on at the moment. So a bunch of Phoenix players are at that, as well as the Phoenix women have started their preseason thing. So all three of those A-League teams that are in the National League, those reserve teams were more like third teams than reserve teams because they had that many players unavailable. So Isa Prins up against those guys, he's running riot. He's running riot against a bunch of 16, 17-year-olds. But like those are some of the best 16, 17-year-olds in the country. And the right back on his side was Lewis Partridge, who was a little bit older than that and was one of the guys who played against Wrexham and was one of the Phoenix's best players last year. So it wasn't that simple. I think the centre back on the other side got tortured a few times. I think he burnt him. That guy was making his National League debut and I think scored an own goal and got subbed after 60 minutes and couldn't hang with the Wellington Olympic guys, but that's the baptism of fire in the National League. And
Shout out to that guy.
yeah, I sort of that's why as well I don't mention who scores the own goals when I'm writing about it because it sort of feels nasty. But yeah, Marcus Camiso was
Right, there you go. He's got a name.
he's obviously the fact it's one of those ones when you're picked at all to play those ones, you're obviously a hell of a player. Like, but you're allowed to have a bad game
and
on the way
like
out.
I get what you're doing in offering some context to Isa Prins and his performance, but it's all about Isa Prins. I don't care who he's playing against. I just want to know Isa Prins. What does he do?
That's the thing with Isa Prins, right? Is yes, this was a favorable matchup, and he ate.
Yep.
What did he do when it was a less favorable matchup in the Chatham Cup final in his previous game? He did even more. He scored this. I think he scored 2 goals and had an assist in that game. I can't remember exactly. What has he been doing all of the last National League? Goals and assists. What was he doing throughout the winter? Goals and assists. He's not even a striker and he has better than a goal per 2 games average, which is crazy. When you're add in the assists that he gets as well, it might get close to a goal contribution per game on average for a guy like that who only recently turned 20 years old. So yeah, the favorable matchup on the weekend, but he does this against everybody. He is a dribbler. He can go 1v1, left-sided player, can play as a number 10 through the middle. Runs in behind the defense. He's fast. He's a great finisher. But also, like I say, sets up a lot of goals. So he's not a selfish player. He's got good vision. He can make those passes. Good crosser of the ball. Like there's a lot to him there. And as I was saying at the start, he has a very similar pedigree, although arguably at this stage more of it. Like he's pretty much had 2 years of being awesome for Wellington Olympic. Like at this stage, that's almost longer than Gillian or Randall were doing that at the same level. Maybe not as much Randall because he bounced around a few teams before he was at Wellington Olympic, so he'd sort of done bits and pieces before that. But I don't know, not at the level that Prins has for the last 24 months. So I don't know. Someone's got to be paying attention at some point.
Men and women who had the most impressive performance, whether it was an upset, whether it was a dominant performance, whether it was just really fighting hard for a scrappy draw, maybe it was someone fighting off the pitch invaders of the animal variety, because praise Jar, there's no streakers or anything at the National League. There's pitch invaders of a different kind. Just in your blurbs that you wrote for the articles that you wrote, you say impressive wins for Christchurch United, Birkenhead United on the men's side. Western Springs carried on in their groove. On the women's side, Western Springs and Wellington United came out swinging. Business as usual for Southern United. Huge wins for Auckland United and Eastern Suburbs. A thrilling upset victory for Petone. So you got like 7 or 8 impressive performances there, but who stood out to you as a unit in the most impressive performances of week 1?
Right, men's competition, I'd lean towards what Christchurch United did and going up to Keithay Park in Auckland, beating Auckland United 2-0 on the back of a double from Noah Karunaratne, who was a former Wellington Phoenix, one of the stars of their under-20s team a couple of years ago, and has been sort of searching for a home in the years since. Pretty good season with the Eastern Suburbs and the winter just gone, but they narrowly missed out on qualifying for the National League. So a few of their players have popped up around elsewhere, and Karunaratne is one of them. He's signed on with Christchurch United, where he looked immediately like just a perfect fit in that team. Like the way he plays, where there's a lot of attacking midfield stuff, but he'll drop in, he'll collect the ball. He's a good passer, but he's also a dribbler, so he can carry it forward too. That felt to me like, because the Rams lost Eddie Wilkinson to, I think it might have been an ACL injury earlier in the year. So one of their best players who does that, who is like an attacker who drops deep, collects the ball, carries it forward, and then, slips in attackers, runners off of him, or goes himself and scores, like that kind of stuff. Someone who has that kind of profile, I think they've probably been missing that. And then to find Noah Karunaratne, who comes in and just does that exact same thing. It was just there was a Noah Karunaratne shaped spot in the squad for him, and he came in and was fantastic on debut doing that. Scored both goals as they won away to an Auckland United team that I think is quite underrated. Like I think that team was pretty good for the most part. Just ran into a rampant Wellington Olympic team in that Chatham Cup final. And even here, like that was a very even game. It's just that the United defense was a little bit better. The Christchurch, they were both Uniteds. The Christchurch United defense was a little bit better. I thought their back three was superb, especially first half. The way there was just like no space at all for Emiliano Tade. Every time he gets the ball, there's 2 guys right in front of him, closing out so quickly. And yeah, they were excellent. That's a tough win because, like I said, it's a good Auckland United team, and they're not going to be finishing last in this National League. They were in good form as well, running into this. Their last game of the regular season, the Northern League season, they beat Western Springs in order to qualify for the National League, Western Springs were champions of the Northern League, so and also needed to win that in order to become champions. The fact that they lost and still became champions was only because Barefoot also lost in their concurrent game. So that was a crazy end to the season in the Northern League. I think 2 points separated first from fifth, and fifth doesn't qualify for National League. So that's how nuts that one got. But yeah, great win from Christchurch United. I think even though they weren't the champions of the Southern League, I think they have a ceiling above what Coastal Spirit have. And when it comes to like scaling up for the Nats, when every game is a big game and whatnot like that, I think they could be a contending team, and the Karunaratne signing helps them a lot in that regard. On the women's side, it's yeah, like I liked Southern United and beating the Phoenix, but also that was an understrength Phoenix team, so they kind of did what they were supposed to do. Auckland United and Eastern Suburbs, big wins against Federation teams. Like goes without saying, there was an 8-0 and a 9-0 in those two games, so that's not the most challenging environments. Both of them actually could have won by more, really. Although Canterbury were unlucky not to score once or twice against Auckland. So I would lean towards Petoni's win against West Coast Rangers was the biggest upset, but I felt like that was more one that West Coast Rangers allowed to get away from them. Petoni kind of set up with a good game plan that defend deep, counterattack where possible. And Renee Bacon scored a nice goal with about 5 minutes to go to give them that win, but it was also like I thought that one was on West Coast Rangers. I thought they approached that game tactically kind of disastrously and got caught out as a result. You only have to look at the goal they conceded and where the defenders are standing over halfway and allowing Bacon to be onside to run through one-on-one from 40 meters out. Like that's not how you want to be defending at 0-0 with 5 minutes to go in the game. So that brings me to the 5-4 victory, by far the most thrilling, exciting game of the first round of either of these things. Like absolutely insane game of football between Western Springs and Wellington United. I still think Wellington United are a contender in this league. It'll be tough for them to see like how they match up against Auckland United, but I do think they can beat most other sides. Probably, yeah. Well, probably think they can beat any other side. They have stacked up as well. Mackie Jenkins scored 2 goals there, so they've strengthened their team from what was already an undefeated Central League campaign. But Western Springs beat them 5-4. And Western Springs, I thought, were comfortable. Well, it's not about what I think; it's about what the table said. They were, Auckland United and West Coast Rangers toe and toe for the title. West Coast Rangers pipped them by a point. Then you go back to Eastern Suburbs, who are like, I can't remember how many points, but a couple of results worse than that. Pretty good, but not in contention for the title. But a clear third place, and then Western Springs were maybe another 10 points behind them, so a very distant fourth, comfortably above fifth place, comfortably qualified, but not contending with the 3 teams above them. They've made 2 absolutely perfect additions to their squad as well. So they've signed Brittany Cunningham-Lee, who was a top scorer in the second division, only playing second division because she wants to. For Franklin United, she could be playing for Auckland United if she felt like it, but tends to pop up on loan with National League teams. Last year played for Eastern Suburbs and was one of the best players in the competition. Now she's playing for Western Springs. Pretty good on debut there, but overshadowed by Maddie Ollington, who was playing for Hamilton Wanderers 2 years ago. They got relegated, so she moved up to Ellerslie this season. Played for Ellerslie and was, I think, 3rd or 4th top scorer for a team that didn't even finish 6th or something like that. So a lower half table team, and she was one of the top scorers. And watching her play for Springs in this game, I see exactly why, because she's powerful, she's fast, she scored an incredible goal from distance. She actually scored twice in this game, and I think she got an assist on top of that. But her second goal was incredible, like just little hesitation dribble to get past a Parker Jackson Cartwright move to get past her defender. And then fizzes one top corner from miles out. It was a fantastic hit. Goal of the round, I would have that as. And just was, brilliant in that sort of, similar to what I was saying about Noah Karunaratne, has been someone who, like, as an attacking midfielder, drops in, collects the ball, charges forward, like instigates the attack like that. Only she was doing it with even more sort of power and directness. So, yeah, an incredible debut from Maddie Ellington, who was coming off the back of a strong season, but yeah, took it to another level with Western Springs after joining them. It just looks like exactly what they needed. Like her and Brittany Cunningham-Lee gives that team physicality and yeah, a bit of that directness in attack, which I don't think they had otherwise. Their top scorer was Liz Savage, who's been playing on the wing, and she only scored about 7, whereas I think the golden boot was Shannon Hansen from West Coast Rangers, who had like 19 or something like that. So obviously not a team that had like a target striker up until that point. Now they've got 2. So I think if any team through that first round went from like if my opinion of any team changed the most through that round, it was how much more hype I have for Western Springs now versus what I had previously.
The New Zealand under-20s have secured a victory over Egypt, 2-1.
Hey.
So good stuff there. We'll be chatting through that tomorrow in the bonus podcast. Nice National League insights. Now I know how you feel when I'm rattling through all my my Aotearoa Rugby League notes and nuggets and whatnot. So that was good to hear. And speaking about Aotearoa Rugby League, we do have grand finals coming up this weekend. NRL grand final. Storm versus Broncos. NRLW grand final. Roosters versus Broncos. State Championship grand final. Warriors versus Burleigh. And that's because the Warriors are New South Wales Cup champions. They defeated your Dragons 30-12. Got a bit of revenge for the other week, the first round of finals footy. They lost to the Dragons, then they had 2 big wins over the Eels and Dragons. I did make a video talking through a lot of Warriors New South Wales Cup stuff, but I do have 2 nuggets that I want to throw out here. Tanner Boyd finishes the New South Wales Cup season 16-0 with 21 try assists. So that's Tanner Boyd's season in reserve grade for the Warriors. And with Tanner Boyd in the halves and Luke Hansen as the starting half, let me just check in with Luke Hansen, because I do love highlighting Luke Hansen and his performances, because he's often overlooked ahead of another Panthers junior. He's now played 35 games of New South Wales Cup for the Warriors as an under-21 player with a 71 win percentage. He's played 18 games last year, 17 games this year. He's scored more tries this year than he did last year, 7-5. He's got more try assists, better tackle efficiency, and more meters per game. So Luke Hansen is someone to watch out for. And as I said in my other Warriors videos, don't really know the status of Luke Hansen at the moment, but we do know the status of the one and only Jet Cleary, who did play 80 minutes in the halves in that loss versus the Dragons. He's kept his bench spot with Tanner Boyd coming back. So I do find that interesting, but I also find it interesting that Luke Hansen's always been in the halves ahead of Jet Cleary. That has always been the case this year. Whenever Luke Hansen's available and there is a spot up for grabs in the New South Wales Cup team, because they started with Tanner Boyd, Maita Martin, one of them's out injured, a spot opens up, it's always Luke Hansen ahead of Jet Cleary. Always. So that's a fact. My question to you, because Jet Cleary has earned selection on the bench, so that's impressive for him. How many minutes combined has Jet Cleary played in the last 2 finals games? He played 80 minutes in the game against the Dragons, the loss, and he's maintained his place in the team for the next 2 finals games. How many minutes combined has he played?
Well, I watched the final against the Dragons, and I can't remember seeing him, other than I think he might have got like a cameo in the last couple minutes because they were 20 points up. So I'm going to say combined less than 5 minutes.
9 minutes combined, 6 minutes
Okay.
against the Eels, 3 minutes against the Dragons. And I did have a chuckle because old Vossi was, when they were talking about like during the Broncos went over the Panthers, they were talking about the state championship final. And the only player he mentioned from the Warriors was Jet Cleary. He was like, this is your opportunity to watch Jet Cleary play. And in my mind, I'm thinking, what, play like 5 minutes?
This is your opportunity to see the best 3 minutes of halves play you'll ever see.
Because, and that's the weird thing about the whole perception versus reality. Right now, there's 2 other Aussies who are ahead of Jet Cleary in the New South Wales Cup team. One of them is also under 21s. He's also from the Penrith Panthers, but no one seems to give a shit about Luke Hanson. They all give a shit about the one and only Jet. Shout out to the Broncos, because they're the only team in both grand finals, NRL grand final, NRLW grand final. All teams have a bit of Aotearoa flavour, although it is a bit diminished for the Roosters woman because Amber Hall was not named in the top 17. They do have Otessa Pule, who I believe is from Otara. Amber Hall's been playing all season off the bench. She gets cut for the grand final after only playing a few minutes in the other final before. But all other teams have at least 3 players from Aotearoa in their teams for these grand finals. So the Roosters play the Broncos in the women's grand final, and the Storm play the Broncos in the men's grand final. The Storm, before I put the spotlight on the Broncos, good win over the Sharks. Jerome Hughes from Wellington. Just tough mahi from Hughes at halfback. I imagine all this is going to rule him out, if it hasn't already, of the playing for the Kiwis this year, but that's all good. He's doing great stuff in the halves for the Storm. Will Warbrick has come back into footy at the Storm late in the season. He's been excellent on the wing. I've got him in my top 3 New Zealand Kiwis wingers alongside Jermaine Isako and Ronaldo Mulitalo. But there's 2 dudes on the bench for the Storm for this grand final that are very undercover Kiwi NRL players. Ativalu Lasati is a Glenora junior from Auckland who went over to, I think he went to school in Queensland, then he was recruited by the Panthers, then he went down to the Storm. So he's just moved south in his journey throughout Australia. He keeps getting selected in this top 17, and Alec MacDonald, who again, a lot of people might not know that he is from Auckland, and maybe the Kiwi selectors don't even know he's from Aotearoa because he might not be in any mixes there, but I love Alec MacDonald, and the thing about those 2 is they keep getting selected for the Storm in the top 17, which tells you all you need to know, right? Like if you're being selected by Craig Bellamy, you're obviously doing something right. And anytime Alec MacDonald is healthy and available, he is in the team. So that shows you his quality. Very fast, mobile, small forward for the Storm, playing through the middle. He's got to be one of the fastest middle forwards in the NRL. And Ativalu Lasate has done a great job covering edge and middle. He's actually overtaken Joe Chan this season. With Joe Chan, he's played some good footy, playing at centre, playing edge forward, a little bit of middle forward. But for the grand final, they have named Lasati on the bench to cover those positions, which obviously is a big salute for him. And also shout out to the Storm under 21s because they won the Jersey Flegg Cup and they had KC Newton Whare in their team. He's from Christchurch. He's a Riccarton junior, high pedigree, high quality middle forward from Christchurch, who is obviously in the Storm system. But the Storm also had Josiah Ekihard Nelly, who is also from Christchurch, Hornby Jr. He didn't play the grand final. I think he missed the last few games of the season, must have been due to injury. but he played a lot of footy this year for the Storm under-21s as well as a middle forward. So you got two middle forwards from Christchurch in that Storm under-21s group, which is good stuff for them. Now their NRL team is in yet another grand final. I mean, at some point we just got to Panthers, they win the grand finals 4 in a row, whatever it is. But in my lifetime, the Storm are always in the mix, right? Like, I can't remember the Storm never not being in the mix, aside from when they had their little Clippers drama going on. Otherwise, they're just always there. And every season, they add a little bit of Aotearoa flavour. Because it used to be like Asafa Solomona, Jerome Hughes. Obviously, the Bromwich brothers and that type of era as well. But now you still got Hughes, but you got Warbrick, you got Lasati, you got Alec MacDonald, none of whom were in... I don't think those dudes were in the Storm system when, like, the 2020, when they won the grand final against the Panthers. Obviously, my memory's got a bit of Aotearoa vitamin tinge to it, so it's not perfect. I don't think those dudes were in the Storm system then, so they've all been recent additions in the last few years. Obviously, Warbrick coming from Sevens, Lasati moving down from the Panthers, and Alec MacDonald, he was, to the best of my knowledge, he left Aotearoa, and I think he went to Ormeau, probably, which is in Queensland, in the wider Brisbane area, I think. He was playing rugby union there, and then he got a little taste of under-21s footy in Queensland, straight into the Storm system, and he is playing a lot of rugby league for the Storm, which is always a good sign, as I keep saying. Let me check. Alec MacDonald, how old is he? 23 years old, and he has played 65 games of rugby league for the Storm, 68% winning, 10 plus games in every season, over 93% tackling in every season, and he's a bench forward, so his meters are always going to be lower than 100 basically, but he's had 50 plus meters per game in every season, 10 plus tackle breaks in every season, hard mahi forward who actually sums up the style of footy that we see in the NRL these days, because he's a small forward, but he's very fast. So he does all the hard work, but he adds a bit of speed, a bit of leg speed. How about that? A bit of foot speed, a bit of knee speed through the middle for the Melbourne Storm. Then we get to the Broncos. Love what the Broncos are doing right now, because they got a whole bunch of players from Aotearoa in both teams, and they've made grand finals. The men's team, Josiah Karapani, Dean Mariner, Jordan Ricky, and Xavier Willison. The funkiest thing here, aside from Jesse Arthurs, who I had in my Kiwi NRL basket, but then he was named in the Queensland State of Origin squad earlier this year. Since then, he hasn't played much NRL. There's a reason for that, right? Like, there's obviously some bad juju, some bad voodoo at work there, because he has been overtaken by both Josiah Karapani and Dean Mariner since he opted to play for Queensland.
Case is undeniable then, isn't it? The evidence is stacking up.
The funkiest thing about the Brisbane Broncos win versus the Panthers was, okay, Karapani, Dean Mariner, they're on either wing, right? They're both Samoans from Auckland. Josiah Karapani, Otahuhu Jr., Dean Mariner, Maris Jr. I actually think Karapani's better than Dean Mariner. I think he just has a bit more running oomph. I think he's got better footwork. I just like Karapani more, but obviously Dean Mariner's a high-class outside back as well. So that's the whole game. You got two Samoan wingers from Auckland on the field for the Broncos whole game, which has been the case in the back end of the season. Jordan Ricky's playing on one edge. He's playing 80 minutes. It's him and Payne Haas who are the only players doing 80 minutes in the Broncos forward pack. 48 tackles at 89%. He did only have 9 runs, and that's kind of the regular zone for Jordan Riki. But he averaged 9.3 meters per run, which is more than usual for Jordan Riki. And the edge forward position's a bit weird because you're either running a decoy or you're taking a really tough run. It's not like there's a lot of the shapes bypass the edge forward. A lot of the, like, sometimes the ball doesn't even go to that edge very often. And when it does go to that edge, it's going to the center, it's going to the playmaker, it's going to the winger. So I don't judge edge forwards on how many runs they take. It's all about efficiency. And for the 4 Kiwi NRL players in the Broncos versus Panthers, Jordan Riki was the only one averaging over 9 meters per run. Karunaratne 8.4, Dean Mariner 7.9, Riki 9.3, Xavier Willison 8.3 meters per run. Jordan Riki, full game at edge forward. Xavier Willison, his first stint was through the middle, but then he scored the try late in the game, and that was because he was playing left edge. So the Broncos finished the game, the last 12 minutes or so, they had 2 wingers from Auckland, and they had 2 edge forwards not from Auckland. Jordan Riki from Christchurch, Xavier Willison coming out of Taharoa and the Waikato region, the west side of the Waikato. I found that very funky because it kind of hits on a few ideas. The rise of Karunaratne at the Broncos, Jordan Riki settling into his 80-minute groove and getting better throughout the season under coach Michael Maguire. And Xavier Willison is, if he's available, he's always on the bench, he's always ready to play middle, but Michael Maguire has used Willison as an edge forward at every chance he's got this season. And Willison only played 41 minutes, but he had 18 runs playing middle and edge. 151 meters, as I said, 9.3 meters per run. That's the quality of Xavier Willison. He can do a great job as a big bopper through the middle, but he's got enough rugby league craft to also play on an edge. And the Broncos finished the game with Willison and Riki as their edge forwards. The women Broncos, funkiest thing for me with the women's Broncos, do you remember last year? Stacey Walker. She was playing for the Broncos. She was awesome. First and only season of rugby league so far. Well, Broncos, like, I'm not saying Kerry Johnson is better than Stacey Walker, but the Broncos replaced Stacey Walker with Kerry Johnson, who is from Northland Kaikoui, and they're in the grand final. Kerry Johnson's just filled the spot. So, like, Stacey Walker is a legend of both rugby codes already in Aotearoa, but the Broncos replaced her with another winger from Aotearoa, Kerry Johnson, who has done a fantastic job playing on the wing this season, and that's just really good recruitment from rugby union in Aotearoa for the Broncos, and that's something they actually do pretty well. Obviously, they've got Mele Hofunga at centre. Aneta Nu'uasala, Samoan player right now. Brianna Clark, who's from Queensland, but she represents the Kiwi Ferns. They're also in the team. But then we've got Gail Broughton in the halves. This season, Gail Broughton has 12 try assists in 12 games. And this is her 3rd season playing in the halves after being a fullback at the Eels. And she's got a career high kick meters per game this year, 74.1 kick meters per game, first season over 60. And she continues to develop as a playmaker. And she's also moving to the Warriors next season. That hasn't actually been announced by the Warriors officially. The Warriors did announce their farewell. It's always a bit iffy, like these farewells. It's like, Some players get the farewell, other players don't get the farewell. Some players get announced as signing, other players don't get announced as signing. Gail Broughton will be announced at some point, but it was like a story on NRL.com that said that this was her last game for the Broncos because she's returning to Aotearoa to play for the Warriors next season. But that hasn't actually been announced by anyone else. So I found that a little interesting observation. So stay tuned for the Warriors announcing that Gail Broughton will return to Aotearoa to join the Warriors next season. If it's Gail Broughton and Patricia Maliepo in the halves, that would be pretty damn cool. Let me double check this. So we got the title, Can Gail Give Her Broncos Sisters the Perfect Going Away Gift? The NRLW decider will be her final trot in maroon and gold before joining the Warriors for the 2026 season. So there you go. Gail Broughton to join the Warriors, great move for the Warriors, and Gail Broughton, obviously. The Broncos also have Azalia Maka and Tafito Lafaele, two players they recruited from rugby union in Aotearoa, as part of the extended squad as well, who probably won't play. Broncos men have Jesse Arthurs on the extended bench, but he's now a Queensland legend, and Joe Chan is on the extended bench for the Storm. And we've also got the state championship final, Warriors versus Burleigh. Burleigh from Queensland. Stephen Adams, he would have dealt with a bit of Burleigh, fishing with Kevin Durant for that tuna. The only other Kiwi NRL junior in the Burleigh team is Lorenzo Mulitalo, who I think is Ronaldo's twin brother. So he's playing for Burleigh. I think he made his debut last year for the Eels, but then he quickly went back to Queensland Cup. And we've got the Warriors team named for the state championship final. All pretty as expected. No dramas, no crazy selections. But they have
so
got
Luke Hanson is ahead of Jet Cleary.
Yep, Luke Hanson, Tanner Boyd in the halves, and Jet Cleary number 14. The wider squad they've announced, because you got to have a bit of a touring party. You got Geronimo Doyle, Toby Crosby, Makai Tafua, and Putoko. Excuse me. The one interesting thing there is Toby Crosby has dropped out of the top 17 after playing all season for the Warriors in New South Wales Cup. So I don't know if that is related to his impending departure to the Penrith Panthers. But with the players that are available to the Warriors in New South Wales Cup, like, there's just not much room for some of these younger or fringy New South Wales Cup players who were there for most of the season. Like your starting props, Afoa, Stowers Smith, and then you got Keilani going in the middle as well. So, and with the way they're selecting their bench for these finals games, they're keeping Jet Cleary on the bench, so then you're down a middle forward spot. So it's basically, are you selecting Jet Cleary ahead of Toby Crosby, Makai Tafua, and Geronimo Doyle, and they're going with Jet Cleary to keep all the Aussies interested. The young forward that is there on the bench and has been on the bench all season after stepping up from New South Wales Cup is Jason Salalilo. And I have been very impressed with Jason Salalilo this season. And that's a heavy duty Christchurch flavour, because he's from Christchurch. He is a Papanui junior. Stowers Smith is from Christchurch. He is a Hallswell junior. And I obviously mentioned Jordan Ricky as well, coming out of Christchurch Rugby League. He's a Hornby junior. What was my note about the Storm under-21s? Both of their main players, both of their most notable Kiwi NRL juniors, also from Christchurch. Casey Newton-Whare and Josiah Ekihard-Nelly. So there's 5 forwards from Christchurch right there. 2 were involved in the best under-21s squad this year for Jersey Flegg Cup, and 3 will be playing on grand final day, 1 in the NRL grand final, 1 in the NRL state championship. And obviously we do have still waiting on some international rugby league squads, so I'll be tracking that closely over the next week or so and staying tuned for that. Otherwise, you got any rugby league thoughts that you want to get off your chest?
No, probably not. I think Dally M's are tonight, so might get some recognition one way or another for someone, but I don't think Jerome Hughes will get to double up on that one. I did enjoy, like, Jerome Hughes fending a dude off with his broken arm on the way to scoring a crucial try in the semi-final was a legendary moment. Oh, little shout out to that. That was probably the one of the, well, it was actually quite a big weekend, wasn't it, for the Kiwi Rugby League things, even though we're beyond the Warriors season at this point. The Warriors juniors having a massive, well, not juniors, but the reserves having a massive win in New South Wales Cup. So I guess that gets included as well. So we still get the Warriors shine. Yeah, a couple Kiwi boys scoring tries in the Broncos, late comeback against the Panthers. There's plenty of great stuff over the weekend, really. But the one that stood out was, Jerome Hughes, broken arm. Who cares? Get out of my way. That was brilliant. That had me cheering and also kind of laughing at the same time.
And Hughes is from Wellington, so I'll double down on the fact that the best rugby league players from Aotearoa are from Wellington. Because Jerome Hughes and Joseph Tapine are the best Kiwi NRL players right now, this year. Tapine's been awesome for the Raiders all season. Okay, the Raiders lost 2 finals games at home. Maybe that is a dent against them. But then you got Jerome Hughes stepping up, as you say, with a broken arm in the NRL finals. And they're both actually Harbour City juniors. And I don't know if Harbour City Rugby League still exists. I'm not tapped into the intricacies of Wellington Rugby League. But I don't know if Harbour City Rugby League still exists. I know that there's Victoria Hunters, so I'm not sure if that might have been a switcheroo there. But Tapine and Hughes are both Harbour City juniors. Let me just confirm Joseph Tapine. Yeah, so he's a Harbour City Eagles junior in Wellington. And of course, you got the Tauiniai sisters from Wainuiamata. They are on the rise as well. Alexis is still one of the best NRLW players in the world coming out of Wellington. So that's a major theme for me right now with Aotearoa Rugby League, is the quality of players from around the regions. There is a heavy-duty Auckland flavour. There's always a heavy-duty Auckland flavour. Like the 2 Broncos wingers, Karapani, Dean Mariner, they're both from Auckland. Lasati and Alec MacDonald, they're from Auckland. Women's players, Tessa Puli, Amber Hall, Malihofunga, Nu'usala, they're all from Auckland as well. Most of the Warriors New South Wales Cup squad is from Auckland. But you look around like the regional tournaments, I always mention at St. Thomas of Canterbury, they were back-to-back schoolboy champions. They didn't make the final this year, I don't think. But like the age group regional competitions, you're seeing a lot more variety in who wins those competitions. And now we've got grand final weekend where Will Warbrick, he's coming out of Kawaru. You got Hughes from Wellington repping Wellington. Ricky's from Christchurch. Xavier Willison is from the Waikato. Kerry Johnson's from up north. Tain Tuaupiki, him and Willison from Taharoa. Tanistella Smith, Jason Salalilo. There's a lot. Kailani Goings from up north as well. Kalis Paul Putoko, who won't play the final. Where's he from? Tokoroa. Toby Crosby, Greytown. Harry Durbin, Rotorua. Makai Tafua, Christchurch. Well, let's go. Warriors extended bench for the state championship final. 5 players named. One of them is from Auckland. So there's that regional flavour in Aotearoa Rugby League that is rising quickly on the men's side. It's pretty obvious on the men's side, but you're seeing it a lot more on the women's side as the NRLW opportunities like far surpass rugby union. So you're seeing a lot of women from the regions around Aotearoa step up to NRLW or just rugby league in general. And this has been coming for a bunch of years. We've been talking about it for a few years now, mainly led by Canterbury and Christchurch, but you've still had that hearty Wellington connection. We've always been talking about Northland, Dylan Brown, James Fisher-Harris. I think this is one of the, I don't want to make it sound any different to the other sports we cover though. Football, where's Isa Prins from? Is he from Wellington?
As far as I know, yeah.
No, a lot of the best, it's not like Auckland dominates the up-and-coming footballers, men and women. These players are coming from everywhere around Aotearoa. Cricket.
Well, that is a theme I've mentioned of the Wellington Phoenix recruitment as well. Men and women, is that they've got players that are from Wellington, sure, but they've also got players that are from Christchurch, from Auckland, from Hamilton, from, all points in between. I think Xuan Loku scored for the under-20s this morning. I think he is actually from
Dunedin.
Dunedin, or somewhere in the Otago region anyway. So, we're spanning the entire country here.
Same thing for basketball. And it's
Smith and Ella Jerez from Northland, just so I get the top and bottom.
And cricket, obviously there's dudes from around Aotearoa in cricket, and men and women as well. So I think it's more normal for those other sports, whereas rugby league, you're starting to see a much higher quality and many more of those higher quality players, quantity coming out of the regions, and all of that is on display on the grand final day. NRL, NRLW, and state championship. You'll see a lot of players from around Aotearoa, except for those players on the extended bench for the Warriors, because they won't be playing.
Come to think of it, actually, as Luke Brooks-Smith scored the other goal for the under-20s. So he had a kid from Northland who came onto the scene playing in Hamilton and now plays in Wellington, and a kid from Dunedin who moved to Wellington, scoring the 2 goals for the New Zealand under-20s football team this morning. So they between them, their air miles span the more or less span the entire depth of the country.
I did actually read
Chatham Island.
I did read the story about Xuan Loke and his the passing of his mother and all that stuff, but there were no air miles there. They drove from Dunedin to Wellington, so your air miles analogy doesn't
Luke
work.
Brooks-Smith moved to Cambridge initially, partly for football, but also initially because he was a star mountain biker, so he might not have driven or flown, he might have just cycled.
Mountain bike your way, not road cycling, but mountain biking.
Mountain biking over the Bryn Derwins on your way down,
Staying off the roads would be even crazier, but not sure if that's possible. But it is possible to do your best today. So do your best, have a crack, and stay tuned for more Aotearoa sports coverage. We're out here, we're doing our best. That's all we can do. That's all you can do. Kia kaha, stay beautiful. Church.